This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.
Now on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT HD, WOGL HD3 Philadelphia. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
If we don't move in our own direction, we're going to become extinct. In fact, in some cases, we're close to being extinct right now.
Presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries, and powered by the law offices of Pond, Lehocky, Stern, Giordano. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
Saturday Night Live in the Delaware Valley. Good evening and welcome in to Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyers. We come to you live on a Saturday night. Big show lined up for you tonight. Thanks very much for tuning in. To all of our listeners who are joining us every Saturday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on Talk Radio 1210. Josh Shapiro will kick off the big show in the A block. He will be with us. Councilwoman Cherelle Parker will join us at the bottom of the hour. And then towards the end of the big show, we're going to talk about a holiday that is not a holiday that I want it to be a holiday. And we'll deal with that throughout the next hour as we roll on. But we have, as you know, or as we always do on the big show here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, J-Doc, we always begin the show with setting the table. Life is about setting the table. And Ryan, I must say, and I must tee you up, sir, you have delivered in a big way in the studio tonight.
Yeah, my big guys at Crafty Soul, Mr. Crafty, they took care of us tonight. We got a taste of soul food. Crafty Soul at 46 in Lancaster. Joe has the fried chicken.
Yummy.
He has the lamb chops.
Got the mac and cheese.
He has the mac and cheese and the collard greens. And we have salmon over there. For anyone that don't want to partake in any of that, we have some good stuff. So we're good. And now we got Mr. Looney coming in, and he's going to eat as well.
Oh, yeah.
And,
all right, let me do this. Before we get the J-Doc evaluation or get the J-Doc read, drum roll, Glenn. Crafty Soul, J-Doc.
Man, I'm in heaven right now. Is there any possible way we could push the opening of the show off at least 10 minutes so I could finish this? We had a delivered special. Ryan, Mrs. Boyers in the studio, unbelievable. Want to thank you guys so much. Just unbelievable. I may drop in and drop out of this broadcast. We got unbelievable. Fantastic job down there, guys.
Great stuff. Ryan delivering in a big way. After the maiden voyage, after the opening week last week, Ryan, welcome in to Saturday Night Live, brother.
Thank you. I get it really quickly, especially when it comes to food. I'm an aficionado,
connoisseur,
as evidenced by my expanding waistline that I'm trying to shrink.
I'm right with you.
Which is why I don't have a plate.
Yeah, we're presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries. We're powered by Pond, Lehocky, Stern, and Giordano, the workers' compensation law firm. J-Doc?
Listen, before I start, I want to wish her happy. I just left a graduation party and did not eat because I know it's going to be eating here. I want to congratulate Samantha Myers for her graduation from Archbishop Carroll High School. Just want to wish you well in the future, and we'll see you after the show. Fantastic.
Good stuff, J-Doc. Thanks very much for leaving Samantha's graduation party and making your way into the big show and into the and here down at 4th and Market. So we appreciate that. Ryan, let's get in and let's get some, while we wait for Josh Shapiro to join us here in the opening
just
block.
Text and he didn't get the number, so I retexted.
All right, so he'll be calling and we'll be bringing him up in a moment. And throughout the show, I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in on a lot of various things that are happening within the labor community. There was big news out of the shipyard, as you know, where they're going to build 2 more big canister containers down there, and work's going to continue down there through 2021 into 2022.
Well, it all goes to leadership. The leadership of the governor, the leadership of the elected officials that dredge the river, the ocean, the river, so that we can have things going on like that. And the governor made an investment in that port to the tune of $100 million that's going to just make it a great place to work and a great destination for all people. So it takes leadership, and we can't do this on an austerity budget. We need revenue so that we can make the proper investment in infrastructure so that we can put people to work.
Lost in all of this week, lost in the conversation about infrastructure, because of everything going on Capitol Hill with Comey and everything else, was to talk about infrastructure. And, you know, John Doherty on one of our early shows here, Ryan, talked about the willingness to work with the current administration and try and figure out how to get infrastructure to a point where it not only becomes meaningful, but it comes to fruition. And some of that, which was talked about this week, was a marriage of private sector money with government money.
Yeah, public-private partnerships. I happen to be on the public-private partnership board of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it's a great way and an innovative way to bring more money, to leverage some government money with private money so that we can put more infrastructure together. We need infrastructure in this country. Infrastructure used to be a bipartisan affair. Now it's not. We stand ready to work with Donald Trump, the president, on infrastructure because we need infrastructure. You can't be a world-class country with third-world infrastructure. And our roads and bridges are rated a D. Our airports are probably rated a C-, and we cannot continue like that because that was a study that was done almost 2 years ago. So if we do a new study, I'm afraid to see what we had. We had a bridge collapse in Minneapolis. We had structural problems with I-95 right here in Philadelphia. If it wasn't for a diligent worker who was on his lunch break that happened to look through a sunroof and saw the structural crack, who knows what would have happened? We would have probably had some fatalities. So we cannot play politics with infrastructure. I know that I hate to see people stuck on 76 every day. A 20-minute commute takes the average driver 2 hours coming from western suburbs. That is unreasonable.
All right, let's do this. Let's make a transition, and this may be somewhat of an odd transition, but I want to get our guest in. Ryan, thank you very much for your comments on that. We'll continue with that when we move into the second part of the big show. Let's get in Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who joins us here now on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Josh, good Saturday evening, sir. Thanks very much.
How are you, Mr. Shapiro? Thank you for joining us on a Saturday night. I know this is a night that you usually have your wife and your children while working hard. This is one that you carve out. So we really appreciate you for being on Labor's Live. How are you, Josh?
It's my pleasure to be with you. My pleasure to talk to hardworking men and women here in the Philadelphia area. So thanks for having me on.
So, Josh, speaking of hardworking men and women, we're losing a lot of productivity due to this opioid crisis, namely heroin, fentanyl, and also the prescription drugs that we're vehemently fighting in step therapy through our prescription. And you have a plan to attack that in the state of Pennsylvania. Could you tell the listeners what your plan is?
I do have a plan, and I appreciate the chance to talk about it. And in fact, Ryan, as you know, earlier this week I met with 60 or so labor leaders from the Philadelphia area, and this is one of the topics we talked about. I will tell you that the number one public safety threat we have in Pennsylvania today, and in fact it's the number one accidental killer, is heroin and opioids. It's also a top public health crisis, and I think it's a top employment crisis. And here's why. We've lost more people to heroin and opioids than anything else. Nearly 5,000 Pennsylvanians, 13 a day, are dying as a result of this. Now, look, as your Attorney General, I go out each and every day, and we lock up the drug dealers, and we've put a lot of effort into that. I've been in office, as you know, about 150 days or so. Ryan, we have literally locked up 3 drug dealers a day every single day I've been in office, including Saturdays and Sundays. And I'll be the first one to tell you that if we continue to do that for the next 4 or, God willing, 8 years, we still won't solve the crisis because we've got to get to the root cause of it. We've got to understand the difference between a drug dealer who needs to be locked up and a drug addict who needs treatment. We've got to understand that here in Pennsylvania, we have way too many prescription drugs being pushed out by doctors and being pushed out by pharmaceutical companies. And 70% of these heroin addicts start with a legal painkiller like an OxyContin or a Percocet or something like that. And so that's why we've increased the number of arrests we've made of doctors who are diverting these painkillers out in the community for illegal use. It's why I'm going after the pharmaceutical companies who continue to dump this in our communities. And it's why we're trying to work with insurance companies to make sure that there's greater access to treatment. So I think if we do all of those things, then we can really make a dent. But make no mistake, this is a massive challenge and one that's going to require all of us to be involved.
Attorney General, it's Jay Doc. We've heard about obviously the opioid epidemic for years, but why now more than ever? It seems like every other day, you hear somebody's losing their life, and there's almost not a person that doesn't know somebody that has had that situation. Why recently has it been such a problem?
Well, I think you've seen a proliferation and increase of these opioid painkillers that are out in the community, and that's creating heroin addicts. As I said before, 75% of heroin addicts start with a legal painkiller, and we've seen a massive spike in the amount of opioid painkillers that are consumed. In fact, we in America represent 5% of the world's population, and as of last year, we're consuming 80% of the world's opioid painkillers. So I think that's a huge part of it. I think that it has become incredibly cheap. If you go out on the streets of Philadelphia or the streets of Pittsburgh or Erie or somewhere else, to buy a bag of heroin today only costs $5. It's cheaper than a six-pack of beer. And so because of how cheap it is, because of how plentiful, how available it is, more and more people are turning to that. And what we're now seeing, and what's driving up the number of deaths, is that the heroin is laced with things like fentanyl, or even in western Pennsylvania, we're beginning to see carfentanil, which is even more dangerous. And so people use this stuff, and it's no longer just heroin. It's laced with these other dangerous chemicals, and people are dying. So I think it's a whole bunch of things. And furthermore, I think it's also the fact that we don't have enough access to treatment. And I think you see this with your workers each day who they get hurt, they get prescribed these opioid painkillers, and it's too hard for them to get off. It's too hard for them to get access to the treatment they need. And I think we need to correct that. So I think it's a whole bunch of things.
Attorney General Josh Shapiro joining us, and I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to take you back to January of 2017 when you were sworn into office. And as you stood on the podium back in January, one of your talking points was this very subject. And I'm curious to see your thoughts on how you feel have you made progress? Have you started the process? Where is it? I know it's such a big subject to attack. Where are you 5 months or 6 months after the fact?
We've dramatically increased the number of arrests of doctors, of drug dealers, of others, as compared to the first quarter of 2016. So I think we can empirically show that we're making progress on that front. We've engaged the insurance companies to get them to change their practices. We're doing a lot of efforts, which I can't talk about at this point as it relates to the pharmaceutical companies, and I think we'll have more to say about that soon. So I think by every objective measure, we've dramatically beefed up the role of the Attorney General in this fight against heroin and opioids. But make no mistake, we can't declare victory, and we've got a ways to go. I think, unfortunately, this crisis is going to get worse before it gets better. But one of the things that I have seen that I think is going to lead to our success in dealing with it is that, my approach has been we've got to collaborate. So my office now works with every district attorney's office, the DEA, the FBI, U.S. attorney's offices, state police, and others. We are making sure that law enforcement is coordinated in this fight and that we all have a similar approach. Lock up the big drug dealers. Try and make sure those who are suffering from addiction get into treatment. That's the approach we've taken.
Attorney General Shapiro, the coordination is what we talked about at that meeting, and we're treated from a health perspective, a public health perspective. I would like to see the Department of Public Health in there because some of these people need treatment and therapy and the holistic integration of family therapy. I can't look at my wife without saying that, who's an MFT, a marriage and family therapist. So,
right.
I have to obviously go home. But it's real because these people ostracize everyone in their lives with their addiction. They have stolen from family. They've lied to family. Family no longer trusts them. So part of their therapy is to reunite the family. That makes them successful in their fighting this addiction.
You're absolutely right, and I think your wife is spot on. And this is a family crisis. When someone in the family is suffering from addiction, everybody is affected. We're also now beginning to see, and this is incredibly troubling, generational heroin addicts. You know, a father and son, mother, daughter, grandmother, granddaughter, whatever the case may be. And it's something that, is only going to make this worse, which is why treatment is necessary. And, Ryan, before I came on the air, I heard you talking about the state budget and the fact that we need real investment in the state budget. And I know you were talking about it in the context of infrastructure, which, by the way, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I think we also need it when it comes to making sure that there is treatment for addicts out there. And I know Governor Wolf has worked really hard to increase the number of beds and facilities available for treatment, but we need to put more money into that. It's one of the reasons why I, wrote a letter to Senator Toomey and Casey and the entire delegation saying, look, don't repeal Obamacare in Washington and replace it with something that actually cuts all the funding for drug and alcohol treatment, because you're making it harder for me to combat the heroin and opioid epidemic. We need those treatment dollars from Washington and Harrisburg, and it's something we should all be willing to invest in.
Well, we appreciate you calling in, and you can go back to enjoying your family, Josh, and we thank you. I wanted to ask you about Comely, but we won't get to that now. We have to go to a break so we can pay some of these bills around here. Thank you, Attorney General Josh Shapiro.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the work you do every day for the hardworking men and women in Pennsylvania. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, good stuff. That's Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. More after the break. We'll continue the conversation, and coming up a little bit later on as we roll in to the second part of the hour, we'll talk about a holiday that's not a holiday that should be a holiday as we prepare for Flag Day.
Talk Radio 1210 WPHT.
I won't participate on behalf of ourselves here at Local 98 or the Philadelphia Building Trades in conversations that are purely dominated on social issues that don't affect our jobs.
A clear and present threat that we face today is the thousands of lives we are losing each and every year to heroin and opioids. And I commend the governor and the legislature for their outstanding work on this at the end of the last session. It is ravaging our communities from Allentown to Erie, in rural, suburban, and urban Pennsylvania. No one is immune from this.
It's Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Welcome back in to the big show. Ryan, you have over-delivered in a big, big way. J-Doc, tonight's meal?
J-Doc has a carcass over there. A chicken carcass and a lamb carcass.
Yummy.
Unbelievable. Dan, don't forget, coming up at the top of the hour, Dan Loney.
Unbelievable.
And the Dan Loney Show from 8 to 11 here on Talk Radio. Dan, thumbs up on the meal tonight? All right, well done from Dan Loney. Ryan, over-delivered. Well done, sir.
I told you, once my guys at Crafty Soul, they're going to take care of you. Great soul food. If you're in the West Philadelphia area, please stop by. Great customer service. Mr. Crafty, thank you again for your good hospitality.
All right, that's good stuff. As we roll on, don't forget Cherelle Parker coming up at 7:34. We'll have her after the bottom of the hour break. Ryan, let me get you to weigh in a little bit, and J-Doc, you as well, on some of the remarks that Josh delivered to us here, joining us here on Talk Radio 1210 about that conversation. And how does it end? I don't know if it'll ever end, and I don't even know if there's ever, Ryan, an opportunity to make a dent, a serious, meaningful, measurable dent.
It is a crisis. We've had a problem on several jobs where, some people are, selling opioids, and we work to get to the bottom of that. But, it's starting to affect some productivity, but we have, in the building trades, we have very good procedures for those types of things, so we can weed that out really quickly. But as the Attorney General said, no community is immune from it.
Exactly.
Be you rich, be you poor, be you in the middle, there is no... And so I agree. I don't know what we do. First of all, we have to treat the addict so we can stop the demand. And then we have to get firm on the person providing the drug deals.
I know that Mayor Kenny and J-Doc, I was talking to you about this earlier today. Mayor Kenny had a gathering this week to deal with panhandling in
we
the
just
city
talked
of
about that.
Philadelphia. And I get it, but I don't get it. That's not where it's going to stop. That's not where it's going to end.
No, but it's painful. It's a painful thing. I'm in Center City a lot, and we were talking during the break. It hurts so much to see so many people in such bad condition, and every day I wince as I'm going down the street, and you listen. You don't have so many $1 bills. You wish you could give everybody, but the point of the matter is this: it's a great problem. It's so painful, and the opioid epidemic obviously affects it. It's just it's a huge, massive problem.
And the opioid problem gives other social problems rise, like homelessness. We were talking about 12th Street
under the convention center.
Under the convention center bridge. So we at the convention center board, we're working on humane ways to deal with them, because you don't want to deal with them inhumanely and just evict them because they have nowhere to go. And we know that it is a covered shelter. It is not a home. It is not a shelter. So we try to encourage and incent them to go to the local shelters, but they're busting at the seams. It is a huge social burden that we must tackle, as the Attorney General said, with collaborations. And Jim Kenney, the mayor, did a great thing because he brought a lot of different departments together so that they don't duplicate their efforts, so the efforts are going in one stream so they can actually be effective.
Ryan, are you, and J-Doc, I'll ask you the same question. Are you offended by panhandling in the city?
I personally am not. I'm from the big city. I'm used to panhandling, but we're luring tourists here. So we have to be very, very careful with the panhandling, because it's the broken windows theory. When does the panhandler become an aggressive panhandler, turn into a robber? So we don't want to incent panhandling because it hurts tourism, which brings a lot of tax dollars to the city of Philadelphia.
I mean, no question about it. And to me, I've walked in Center City. I'm there every day, and you gotta stop this at the point of attack. In other words, where it begins. The opioid. The doctor that's prescribing and now they don't have the patient doesn't have insurance. He goes to the streets and now all of a sudden, homelessness is right there. So. It's a major problem. It's awesome to hear that Ryan and the mayor and obviously Josh Shapiro are, it's a priority. Obviously something has to be done about it, and the opioid epidemic, and that is, those are the people that live through the opioid epidemic. The ones that are losing their lives every day. I mean, Pennsylvania is number 3 in the country behind California and Florida in opioid deaths.
Am I wrong? Because I don't look at someone who's on the corner looking for money or a handout. I don't look at that as, when I give them, I don't look at contributing to an opioid issue. I look at reaching out to somebody who's in need. Am I wrong to look at it like that?
It's two schools of thought on that. One school is that you're inciting them to be there because, look at the foot traffic. 5,000 people walk through, 20% give them $1. That's a living. So they're going to be on that corner every day. If you don't give them money, they probably won't be on that corner. However, the humanitarian in you says, I want this person to eat. So what I try to do is buy food, find out what they want, go to the hot dog cart, get them a hot dog, things of that nature, so they'll have some sustenance, but they won't have any money to incent them to stand on that corner every day.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer here on Talk Radio 1210, along with J-Doc. I'm Joe Krause here on a Saturday night. A gorgeous night, by the way, in the Delaware Valley. When we come back after our commercial break, Councilman Cherelle Parker will be along with us, and we'll have that conversation back in a moment.
1210 WPHT.
I believe there's room, for the national building trades, the local building trades, that have partnerships with the Trump administration as it pertains to energy, as it pertains to infrastructure, as it pertains to the undocumented worker.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, all presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Serious doctors for serious injuries, coming up tonight at 7:48, 7:49. Jim Jenkins will be along to talk about my favorite holiday that's not a holiday that's coming up next week, which is Flag Day. So we'll talk to Jim Jenkins, J-Doc, and that coming up. We'll have Jim right around 7:48, 7:49.
Yeah, he's got a great initiative. I want to congratulate John Doherty, Pat Eiding, and the whole crew over at the Building Trades for their unanimous reelection. Certainly, Wayne Miller, that's the board of directors over at the Philadelphia Building Trades on the unanimous reelection of their leadership. Fantastic job, and I want to congratulate them.
And I'll take this moment to thank Crafty Soul because you're eating in between breaks, so I want to make sure the audience is well aware. I
resemble that remark,
by the way. Doing that, so we thank Crafty Soul and Ryan Boyer for delivering. We welcome Sherry Tucker into the studio tonight, so we have a guest watching and taking in and absorbing all that Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor has to offer every Saturday here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT.
And I want to take this time to give my good friend Butch Bennett from the Operating Engineers, business agent of 542, a happy birthday. He's 56 today, and I'm actually missing his cookout because I'm here with Saturday Night Labor. So, but he said, go to the job, do the job, get the message out. That's right. That's what we're trying to do.
At least he's listening and he heard the shout out, so that's good stuff.
Yeah, Butch.
Well, that's what you do. You got to leave the party, you got to give him a shout out. So absolutely.
And we're going to bring on City Councilwoman Cherelle Parker, who spearheaded some of this stuff with Rebuild to get our parks, recreation centers, and libraries fixed up. Cherelle, how are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you all so much for having me.
Cherelle, you should be in studio. This food is phenomenal.
Cherelle, you're missing.
I'm not a chance to eat, but I know how the food tastes. So, Cherelle, we're talking about a little social issues today. How can this rebuild, the money that we're taking from the soda tax, to rebuild parks, recreation centers, and libraries, how can that affect and change the lives of people that live in your district?
Well, for me, I represent a district that is often described as middle neighborhoods, and that is neighborhoods that are right on the line, and with a little bit of an investment, they can grow and or they can decline. And the best way or the best tool for me regarding neighborhood stabilization has historically been employment. And I am unapologetic about my advocacy and viewing this rebuild process and this investment in the building of our parks, rec centers, and libraries as a tool that can connect Philadelphians, and particularly African Americans and others of color, into the building trades that will give them the opportunity to gain the skills that will allow them to have a career versus an infusion of some short-term, immediate cash that doesn't have retirement security and or health care following it. And so that has clearly been my view, or the lens through which I view the rebuild process. And let me also be correct in just noting that my vision regarding the diversification of the trades and using rebuild as a tool to systematically establish a process that will allow us to do so is not just in regards to government work. So we're talking about a $500 million project. This is extremely important, but I want you to compare the $500 million government project to the $11 to $12 billion if you count the last 2 years and the next 3 years worth of projections of private sector work. And I'm just talking about the West Philadelphia work that we've heard my colleague, Councilwoman Janie Blackwell, speaking along with Schuylkill. So it is, for me, not just from a government perspective, but also private sector work and work that's going on in neighborhoods across the city.
Well, you gave a very eloquent speech at City Council about the importance of working with the building trades because non-union work doesn't provide the type of protections that the building trades does. And you happen to live with a tradesman, which is your husband, so I know you know firsthand. That is a great thing. But Cherelle, could you also talk about some of the pressure that you took when you guys took that very tough vote on the soda tax so that we can fund these things?
Well, listen, and I appreciate your acknowledging that it wasn't an easy vote. Whenever you hear that a particular sector and or industry will be hurt and we could potentially lose jobs, for me, I was really most touched, not just by the job loss overall, but when I had owners, business owners, supermarket owners like Jeff Brown, a ShopRite, who's done a yeoman's job. The workers in his supermarket are union workers. They belong to Local 1776. And so with that being said, it was tough, but you only have to I have a district. Let me just put it in perspective for the listening audience. I want you to imagine representing a community that's along Cheltenham Avenue, where one side of the street is Philadelphia and the other side is Montgomery County. And you have your young people who may have friends or relatives, and they go to visit a school or visit a park or a rec center or a library there, and they look at the quality of the facilities that they see on the county side, and then they come over to the Philadelphia side and they say, why is my building crumbling? Why don't I have a modern facility with all of the things that I just saw across the street? And there is no logical answer and or explanation that we can give except to try to find a process to make it work. And that was why my vote for the tax was cast in the affirmative. And again, not a difficult thing, but look at pre-K and the number of slots. And I'm really fortunate that my district fared well in working to enhance the quality of pre-K slots that were there. So this was about young people. It was about the bricks and the mortars of the building of the new buildings, and that was great. But the employment opportunities for me and the ability to ensure that doing business was done so in a way that could be bundled, that would allow smaller contractors to participate in the process. And that, too, is something that was very important to me. So, look, let me just, for the record, give a big shout-out to my city council president, Darrell Clark, give a shout-out to our mayor, Jim Kinney, and to you guys over at the Building Trades, because this is not an easy process that we're going through.
We're going to get it done, Cherelle.
And Cherelle, let me just ask you, because J-Doc, how long do you think, relatively recently the soda tax passed, how long do you think before it starts to impact the community in a major way?
Oh, immediately now. I know, obviously everyone knows that we are waiting for sort of a response to the litigation that's currently taking place. But I was just at a pre-K center, an early learning center in my district this past week off of Roosevelt Boulevard in the Oxford Circle area. The number of slots that they have increased, and I had a chance to stay in the classrooms and watch the toddlers from sort of birth through 2, and then 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, where they're on their way to kindergarten. And I will tell you that I was very impressed that we were right here in the city of Philadelphia, and the quality of what was happening in those centers is what I was very impressed with in Oxford Circle. So a huge shout out to those young people too. And let me just say again, this is not an easy thing that we're talking about. I want to be very forthright and know that historically we have had challenges across the board as it relates to talking about diversity and inclusion relative to the building trades. And there are several people who have said to me, be very forthright, Cherelle, you're crazy to think that we will ever systemically have a process that will diversify the building trades. It will never be done. Building trades will never support it. Government will never be able to work to make it happen. And, again, you sit there and listen and you become the punching bag and you take it. But I've come from a place where I spent 10 years in Harrisburg.
Well, you
where
zealously advocate.
Dominated by Republicans. And you had to sit down and get things done. And I'm confident and hopeful that with the leadership that I just described, with our president and our mayor, along with the trades and my colleagues.
And along with you, Cherelle, you've zealously advocated for your constituents for a very long time. And unfortunately, we got to go to break. And I really appreciate you calling, Cherelle. You know you're my star on council. You work hard. You're prepared. And you always have the constituents of the 9th Councilmatic District before you make any decision. Thank you for coming on, Cherelle.
Thank you guys for having me.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
That's Councilwoman Cherelle Parker joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT.
1210 WPHT.
I've been coming out of step with them guys, okay? And I was a treasurer of the Democratic Party. I've been a loyal Democrat my whole life. But I've told people, and it hasn't, like I told you, it just didn't resonate with this election. If you look at the last few years, I've been telling people we have to become a little bit more individual. We have to be more of our own brand. We have to do a better job at becoming a business.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We take a moment to shout out to John Doherty, and to his wife. We continue, Ryan, to send our blessings and our prayers on a daily basis for John as they work through and hopefully find good health at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was over there with him on Friday evening about 4:30. He's burning the midnight oil. I've always had a lot of respect for John, but it raised immeasurably by the way that he's standing by his wife through our trials and tribulations. He's at McGee round the clock. If you want to meet him, you know where to go, and he's there in her room by her bedside. And I was there, with him and Celia on Friday, and he's just, that's his life now.
Absolutely, thoughts and prayers to them, man. Unbelievable. As we segue, I'm happy to bring on the program Jim Jenkins, and Jim is the founder of the 10,000 American Flags Initiative, and happy to have him on. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe Doc, Ryan Breuer, and Joe Krause.
It's great.
Thank you for your work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first, tell us a little bit about what's going on right now with the 10,000 Flags Initiative.
Well, 2 years ago, David Crane and I wrote a petition, and we passed a resolution at City Council to get 10,000 American flags up and flying throughout the city of Philadelphia. And the Mayfair Civic Association has taken that, and in the petition it says to encourage others to put up the flag. Well, they put up 150 flags around the Mayfair Loop. And on Wednesday, June 14th at 7 o'clock, they're going to have a walk. And they're going to have a truck with American flags. They're going to sing the national anthem, face painting with American flags. And we're going to walk around the loop real leisurely, play a little patriotic music, and enjoy the flags that they are displaying beautifully up around the Lincoln High School.
Now, what is the progress? Your goal was 10,000 flags. Where are we at about now?
Well, right now we have 200, a little bit more, 210. And we have Gerald Solomon, state representative. He's putting 30 up on Bustleton Avenue. We have somebody else putting another 30 on Frankfurt Avenue. Frank Oliveri from Pat Stakes is looking at putting a flag on top of his building. Hopefully we'll get more encouragement by that and put them up on more businesses in South Philadelphia. And people are just taking it and running with it. It's really about community-based. You can't put up 10,000 American flags by yourself. James Rokeby is willing to go and help people put them up on their poles and show them how to do it, because it takes a little bit of work. And my job after I get the neighborhoods is really working on City Hall. There's 8 flagpoles that are broken there. That's taking a lot to get done, as it's very expensive to fix. And that will be my goal. But I'm helping James Wortlieb, and David Crane's helping immensely, and as well as Pat Stakes.
Jim Jenkins joining us here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT as we look ahead to Flag Day, Jim, on June 14th, also the Army's birthday, and a very, very special day. And I join with you, as well as J. Doc and certainly Ryan Boyer, and continue to support your push. And I strongly encourage everyone that I see, J-Doc, and everyone that I talk to put up an American flag, not only in the city but at their home and wherever they are, wherever they reside.
Absolutely, and we really appreciate Jim Jenkins and what you're doing, Jim. Continued, working on this, baby. You got our support. You've been on the program before, and keep up the good fight. It's an unbelievable cause.
Thank you so much.
All right, good stuff from Jim Jenkins. Ryan Boyer now weighing in. Ryan, boy, it was a quick hour. I do want to give you a chance just to weigh in a little bit about what you absorbed here tonight. We bounced around a little bit. Cherelle talked about some of the benefits of the soda tax, but we started out with a very, very important topic from Josh Shapiro weighing in on the opioid crisis, which is now front page, not only in Philadelphia but across the land.
To me, it all goes to the core function of government, and that is to protect the people from other people. In this opioid crisis, we have to protect the people from drug dealers and unscrupulous pharmacies that are taking advantage of people in a state of weakness. And we have to do that, and that is a core function of government while I'm here on 1210 when we talk about the core function. And it's also about investment in government, and that we need resources so that we can tackle some of these social issues, some of the issues of infrastructure, jobs, because a good job can tackle a lot of social issues. But when you have a physiological need for a drug, when it starts at a legal thing, I know some of my guys' back hurt construction, and they go to the doctor and they say, my back hurt. and the doctor prescribes him 100 Percocets.
It's crazy, man.
Why not just give him 5 till the back stop hurting? Not give him 100. So now he's hooked on Percocet. He loses his job because you can't work on Percocet. So it is a problem that we have smarter people than me working on, but I'm going to be doing everything that I can to try to help with this opioid crisis in the United States of America.
All right, good stuff from Ryan. Good stuff from Ryan Boyer. J-Doc, I give you 30 seconds to weigh in.
Just well said, Ryan. Glad that we have leaders like you attacking this problem, and certainly Josh Shapiro. That segment could have gone on forever, and certainly great to have Cherelle Parker on, and Jim Jenkins, a big cause, and we're happy to have people fighting to put American flags up and not burn them.
All right, good stuff. Well done, J-Doc, and well said. That's going to bring our show Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor and Ryan Boyer here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We come to a close. We're presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries. We're powered by Pond, Lahaki, Stern, and Giordano, the workers' compensation firm. And we thank all of our listeners for tuning in and being a part of the big show. For Ryan Boyer, for J-Doc, for Glenn Behind the Glass. Stay tuned for the Dan Loney Show here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. I'm Joe Krause. We'll see you next time.